If you're looking to buy a case and you want to spend between $80 and $100, there is so many different cases to choose from that are actually very good. So for example, if you go for Phanteks P400A or NZXT H510 or Meshify C, for example, it doesn't matter, they're all very good choices. But if for some reason you need to spend even less on a PC case because of a tight budget, then you really need to make sure you don't end up with a case that has either a really bad build quality or really bad performance, or if you're really unlucky, both of those things. So MetallicGear sent us 3 of their affordable cases to check them out because they're supposed to offer a lot of value for a very low price. And for those of you that don't know this, MetallicGear is actually a part of Phanteks. So given their reputation when it comes to PC cases, I would say MetallicGear is off to a very good start. Now these cases have the same base chassis, the only difference is the front panel and some features that I'm going to cover a bit later. The cheapest one of the 3 is the Neo Silent that I have right here. It has a closed front, it has one fan in the back, and that's pretty much it. It's very simple, very straightforward, and it will cost you $50. For $10 more, you can get a Neo Air. This is the white one in the middle, and this one has a mesh panel in the front. It is a bit more airflow focused, as the name suggests, and it also offers 2 RGB fans to light up your system a bit. For $10 more, you can get the fanciest one of the 3, which is the Neo G right there, and that one has a bit of tempered glass in the front, and it offers addressable RGB fans in the front. So let's check these cases out and see how they actually perform and if they're worth considering if you're building a PC on a budget. Let's go. This video is brought to you by the Elgato Key Light Air. Now you probably think key lights are made to make your streaming setup look more professional, but did you know it's also great for your plants? They just thrive in that soft lighting that can be easily adjusted using your app or your Stream Deck. Love your plants, by Elgato. Let's start by looking at the core chassis, which is the same for all these Neo cases. These are fairly compact ATX cases that are 46 centimeters tall, 20 centimeters wide, and 45 centimeters deep. The quality of the steel is pretty decent. I mean, it is nothing amazing, but it's still above average you would expect to see in a $50 to $60 price class. The tempered glass side is kept nice and clean with an integrated PSU shroud, and there is a glass panel held in place by 4 screws. Now, some cases have shown lately a bit more of an innovative mounting solution for the tempered glass, but honestly, at this price, you should just be happy they didn't slap acrylic on it instead. The top panel is simple steel with some fixed ventilation cutouts that are angled backwards to avoid dust falling in, but keep in mind, there is no actual dust filters, so time will tell if this solution is actually effective or not. The main front I/O is the same on all 3 cases as well. It has 2 USB 3 ports, 2 audio jacks, and a power button. But the small buttons differ per model. The Neo Silent has a reset button, the Neo Air has a reset button and an RGB controller button, and the Neo G uses both buttons for RGB controls instead. But the back of the case shows some signs of the lower end positioning. The whole back is not as sturdy, it's a bit of a thinner metal, and the expansion slot mounting is on the outside of the case. On the bottom there is a dust filter covering the power supply, and it's a really nice dust filter that you can reach from the back of the case. Now, the front panel is where each case really differs. The Neo Silent comes with a mostly closed plastic front that has that brushed aluminum look. I mean, it looks alright, but honestly it does feel a bit flimsy, which you would expect in this price class. It is easy to pull off, and we can see there is some dampening on the inside, but there are also some airflow gaps on each side. There's also a removable dust filter behind it that is easy enough to clean once you remove the front panel, and the Neo Silent doesn't have any fans in the front, only one black fan in the back. The Neo Air has a completely mesh front instead, with a fine mesh integrated into the panel itself, so there is no extra filter here. This one comes with 2 RGB fans in the front that can be controlled using the built-in controller or your motherboard, and there are no fans in the back. Now, paying $10 more for an extra fan, the RGB upgrade plus an RGB controller sounds like a very good deal. The Neo G has a glass cover with a nice snowflake looking design behind it. It has some air gaps on the side for the 2 digital RGB fans to breathe, and like the Neo Silent, it also has a removable dust filter. These fans too can be controlled using your motherboard or the built-in controller, so you're pretty much paying $10 more for some fancier RGB and a bit more glass. Now, as you probably noticed, all three have their 3.5-inch drive bays accessible from the front, and even though it uses simple plastic brackets, they do have some dampening built in, which is a very nice touch given the price class of these cases. The inside is the same for all three as well, and I think it looks quite clean for an affordable case. Technically, there is space for an extended ATX motherboard up to 280 millimeters of width, but I do think ATX motherboards make more sense because they do keep the cable gap on the side of the board accessible. There is a space for any CPU cooler up to 170 millimeters of height, GPUs up to 400 millimeters of length, and a power supply up to 250 millimeters. So, while these cases aren't super huge, they can easily fit most typical components nowadays. There is space for 220 or 140 millimeter fans in the front, 220 millimeter fans in the top, and a single 120 millimeter fan in the back, or just radiators of the same size. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the Neo Silent, and what I wanted to do with this case is to actually build a system that is very loud and see how much this case will keep the sound in. So I went with the Aorus X570 Pro motherboard with the Ryzen 9 3900X. There is a stock cooler there to make a bit of a ruckus, and I took one of the loudest graphics cards that I have, and that is the Aorus RTX 2080 Extreme. Now, I know it's not fair to make such a high-end build in a €50 case, but let's call it a worst case scenario. For the Neo Air, I actually went with an Intel build, and here I have an Aorus Z390 master motherboard with an Intel Core i7-9700K. Because it doesn't come with a stock cooler, I used a nice cooler from Be Quiet. This is a Dark Rock Slim. I have an MSI RX 5700 Gaming X graphics card, and I also used a nice Dominator Platinum modules to match the color of the front fans. And I really think that the build came out really well, and it looks really nice, the white and the nice little mint blue color. And even though you're gonna see later the temperatures of this case are actually quite good, I do think they should have included another RGB fan in the back just to kind of complete the look of the case. And for the fanciest of the three, I went with a nice little water-cooled addressable RGB build, and it's completely an Aorus build. So I have the brand new Aorus cooler, the 240mm all-in-one that I mounted on the top. There is an Aorus X570 master motherboard with a Ryzen 7 3700X in there. I have RGB modules from Aorus as well as a graphics card. This is the RX 5700 XT, and the whole build looks very nice, and it's definitely something you can do if you really like RGB look. From a building perspective, there isn't much to add. They're pretty easy to work with using both air and water cooling. There is enough space for cable management in the back, especially in the front of the case, but the space behind the motherboard is a bit tight. So if you're gonna have multiple SSDs with SATA power connectors in the middle of the cable, keep that in mind. But if you keep your build very simple and you avoid that middle space behind the motherboard, it would be just fine. So let's talk performance and jump straight into CPU and GPU stress tests. The Neo G thermals are pretty good. It is a bit louder than I would like it to be, and that is because the CPU cooler gets loud under load. Now, the stock fans themselves aren't loud, but it does show that this case clearly isn't doing too much to hold the noise of other components in. Now, the Neo Silent also gets pretty audible thanks to the AMD stock cooler running at full speed as soon as the CPU hits 75 degrees. Now, clearly the single case fan and the closed front are not an ideal match for a high-end CPU and GPU, but considering I tried to make the cheapest case work the hardest with some heavy specs, I'd say it still holds up reasonably well. Now, one thing that I am disappointed with is how little the so-called dampening works. Testing with the entire front panel removed only makes the build about half a decibel louder, so simply put, it doesn't help noise at all. The Neo Air is where we see by far the best result. The mesh front combined with a simple tower cooler leads to really great thermals, all while the system remains really nice and quiet. Now, considering again these are pretty good specs, seeing an affordable case like this do so well is actually great. If we look at the idle results as well, the Neo Air build is simply inaudible. So basically, if you really care about silence, you're better off spending a bit more on this case and a super quiet air cooler than on a silent case with dampening. So that about covers it for the MetallicGear Neo cases, and even though they're quite decent, they're still nothing super special. They're just metal boxes. Keep in mind, for every dollar you want to save, the manufacturers need to figure out a way how to keep the price of the case lower by either taking down some features or the quality of the case, or sometimes both. But that aside, I would say that all three cases are quite decent. They have great build quality considering the price, they have really nice quality control, they perform quite decent, they have really nice details and this nice little modern look. But I would say that the Neo Air is the case that stands out the most here. It costs $60, it offers great thermals and some RGB. Now, I would argue that it would be very nice if they added another fan in the back because that would just complete the look, but I guess they had to make some choices somewhere, and even without the fan in the back, the performance of the case is really good. I wouldn't recommend spending $10 less on the Neo Silent because you do lose one fan and the closed front doesn't really keep the sound in, so I would say spend $10 more and get the Air instead. The Neo G is also in a bit of a difficult position because you need to spend $10 more, so $70 in total to get a bit of glass in the front and a different type of RGB. Now, I would say that RGB is also nice, and if you like it, you should definitely go for it. It's a good and decent case. But $70 is also a bit of a spot where you also have other cases to look into that are objectively a bit better. For me, the Neo Air is the case of the three that offers the perfect balance between value and the price, and is the most logical recommendation in my opinion. But if you like any of these three, you should just go for it. They're very decent cases. Now, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about this review and about these three affordable cases. Don't forget to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and see you in the next one. Bye!